The Village in the Mountains by Hugo von Hofmannsthal, as translated by Joel Rotenberg. Part 1. In June, the people have come out of the city and are occupying all the large rooms. The peasants and their wives sleep in the attics, full of old harnesses hung on the wall, dust-covered sleigh harnesses with little yellow balls rustling in them, old winter coats, old flintlocks, and rough handsaws dulled by rust. They have taken all their things out of the downstairs room and emptied all the chests for the city people, and nothing remains in the rooms except the cellar smell of big cream buckets and old wood that drifts out of the interior of the house through the small windows and floats sour and cool in invisible shafts over the tops of the pale red hollyhocks up to the big apple trees. Only the decorations on the walls have been left behind. The antlers, and the many small pictures of the Virgin Mary and the saints in carved and papered frames, between which hang rosaries made of imitation coral or tiny wooden balls. The women from the city hang their big garden hats and their colorful parasols on the antlers. In the loop of a rosary they prop a picture of an actress, her regal shoulders and raised eyebrows beautifully expressing great pain. They lean the photographs of young men, of elderly eminences, and of unnaturally smiling women against the back of a small waxen lamb bearing the flag of the cross, or they wedge them between the wall and a gold-painted heart in whose crimson stigmata are 7 small swords. But they themselves, the men and women from the city, are to be seen sitting in all the places where no one else sits, at both ends of the basins of the wooden artesian wells, where sprays of water are blown back by the wind into their hair, until they are hung with droplets like fine, densely woven morning cobwebs. Or they sit on the stile, where they annoy everyone whose path leads over it. But they don't know that that's where someone might have to go, there in that particular area between the 2 fences and the deeply cut, noisy stream. To them it doesn't matter where one goes. There is something so casual, so effortless in their way of being. They don't need holidays and can put any moment to whatever use they like. That's how it is with their singing, too. They don't sing in church or at dances. Suddenly, in the evening when it's getting dark and beams of light are falling from many small windows between the fading trees and over the paths, they begin to sing, one here, one there. Their songs seem to be mixtures of all sorts of notes, sometimes almost like dance tunes, sometimes hymns. There is light-heartedness in them and mastery of life, and when they fall silent, the darkening valley resumes its serious life. You hear the rushing of the great stream, swelling and fading again, swelling and fading, and here and there the separate rushing of a small wooden artesian well. Or the fruit trees shiver and send a shower of drops rustling down through all their branches, as suddenly as the unexpected sighing of a sleeper, and the startled hedgehog runs a bit faster on its way. But quite a few of the beams of light don't go out for a long time, and are still there when the Big Dipper has slid to the edge of the sky, its lower stars resting on the ridge of the mountain, and flickering restlessly through the tops of immense larches. Those are the rooms in which a young girl is reading in a book about life's opportunities and breathing confusedly, as though moved by an intoxicating and yet humbling music. Or in which an aging woman with frightened and astonished thoughts cannot grasp that this dreamlike here and now means the inescapable, the real for her. The candlelight falls from these windows all the while, reaches through the branches of the apple trees, lays a streak over the meadow, over the stone dike, down to the black surface of the lake, which seems to reflect it and carry it like a gleaming spill of pale yellow. But it dives down, too, and throws a shining shaft into the wet dark, in which the gray-black perch float mindlessly, and the restless small white fish quiver ceaselessly like compass needles. Part 2. They mark out their rectangular tennis courts on the meadows and enclose them in high gray nets. From a distance, they look like monstrous spider webs. To someone inside, the landscape resembles those on Japanese pictures whose glaze is crisscrossed by regular fine cracks. The blue-green lake, the white band of the shore, the spruce forest, over it the cliffs, and above everything the sky, delicately colored like pale heather blossoms. It all has the fine gray squares of the net over it. The rolling hills on the other side of the road are being plowed. Just as often as the players move in order to get on the right side of the sun and the wind, the plowmen turn the heavy team and with a strong stroke heave the plowshare into the beginning of a new furrow. The plowmen plow at an even pace. The plow cleaves the rich soil like a heavy ship, and the big hands, etched by wind and work, lie heavily and steadily on the plow handles. The 4 players' game varies. Now and then one of them is very strong. The whole game is carried by his shots, which are calm and finished like swipes of a young lion's paw. The balls flying through the air. The other players, indeed the lawn and the nets in which the image of the woods and clouds is caught, everything follows his wrist, mysteriously bound to it as though by a powerful magnet. One of the others is weak, very weak. Thinking comes between him and each of his shots. He has to observe himself. His movements are deeply false. Sometimes they are the movements of a fencer, sometimes those of someone who wants to ward off stones. A third is indifferent to the game. He feels a woman's gaze on him, on his hands, on his cheeks, on his temples. From time to time he closes his eyes in order to feel it on his eyelids too. His mind is on the previous evening. For the woman whose gaze he feels upon him is not here. Sometimes he quite absent-mindedly takes a few steps towards a ball that does not exist. Nevertheless, he does not play too badly. Every so often he makes a shot with a great composed movement, as a sleeper might reach into the air for fruit seen in a dream. And the ball with which he makes contact flies back as though hit with the greater force of the stronger player. It drills into the lawn and does not come up again. The 4 players' game is variable. Tomorrow, perhaps, the indifferent player will take the place of the strong one. Perhaps, too, memories of showing off and daring and lungfuls of the morning breeze will turn the one who is today quite weak into the strongest. But the plowmen plow steadily, and the fine dark furrows run straight through the rich soil.